Hi, this is Daryl Meyer from Keller, Texas. Today is Tuesday, November 9th, 2010. Well, did anybody see that missile launched off LA's coast? Kind of weird. I found that story at several places. I'm going to read the story off AOL News today. It says unexplained missile launched off LA coast. It says an unexplained missile shot across the sky off the coast of Los Angeles and was caught on video by a CBS News traffic helicopter during Monday night's rush hour. Today, the missile is still a mystery. A Navy spokesman told CBS affiliate KFMB that it was not theirs, and so far the Pentagon has not been able to explain it either. The missile was reportedly about 35 miles west of LA and just north of Catalina Island. NBC's Pentagon correspondent Jim Miklaszewski reports that a missile launch would not have been planned so close to a major city, and at the very least, residents would have been warned a test was imminent. A senior Pentagon official told him, "This is bizarre." So what do you think that was? Could it be somebody bought one of these new Russian weapons and they're testing it? It came from the ocean, so it either had to be on a boat or a submarine. And there's not many countries that are capable of launching a missile underwater with a submarine. There's just a handful. United States, Russia, China. Not sure who else. I know those three for sure can. But that's very strange. I'm happy it went west and not east to go inland. But who was doing that? It makes you wonder. Was that a test? Somebody seeing how close they could get to the coast and launch a missile without getting caught? Just want to present this to you. Iran and North Korea have been testing missiles. And several of their tests, the missiles went about 200 miles up in the air, and then nothing. Just fell back to the earth. That's something to think about, because if somebody launched a missile into the atmosphere and detonated a nuclear bomb at about 200 miles up, that would create an electromagnetic pulse that would pretty much knock out most of the electrical grid of this country. If it went off let's say the East Coast, it would pretty much knock out power all the way to the middle of the plain states, Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska. So half the country would be just in darkness. Now, if they launched them off both coasts at the same time, they could probably effectively wipe our electrical grid and our power grid offline. And who knows how long it would take to repair it. And we would be very vulnerable for an attack from all directions. Just a scenario. I'm not trying to scare you, just trying to help you see maybe what's going on here. If the Navy claimed it wasn't theirs and the Pentagon doesn't know who did it, that kind of troubles me. Either they're lying or they're trying to cover up something else, or they truly don't know. I'm not accusing them, not pointing fingers, just I find it very strange. So I guess hopefully we'll learn more about this in the next few days. Alright, this next story is out of haaretz.com. Netanyahu says nuclear-armed Iran is the greatest danger facing Israel. Well, we pretty much knew that. But he's speaking at the General Assembly of the Jewish Federations of North America. Prime Minister warns against the delegitimization of Israel, says authors of Goldstone Report owe the IDF an apology. This out of New Orleans. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told the American Jewish community leaders in New Orleans yesterday that Iran's nuclear ambitions pose the greatest threat to Israel and the world, and that Tehran would only halt its aspirations for atomic weapons if it believed that it faced a real possibility of military action. Again, he's trying to bring this whole thing to America, saying, you, America, need to help threaten him to make him stop. But I don't think even threats from America are going to cause them to do that. We have a lot of military hardware over in the Persian Gulf area, and it's had no effect on Ahmadinejad at this time. So I don't know what else he thinks America might be able to do. Israel's going to probably strike them alone, and then they'll draw America into it, and then who's going to come in on Iran's side? Russia, China, North Korea? Could get pretty ugly. But I trust God, and I'll pray for protection, and we'll see how that goes. This out of the Jerusalem Post. Netanyahu on building plans says Jerusalem isn't a settlement. He got pretty upset with Barack Obama calling Jerusalem a settlement the other day in a speech he gave in India. Prime Minister responds to international criticism about Israeli plans to advance 1,345 homes in Jewish areas of East Jerusalem by saying government never agreed to place any restrictions on construction in the capital, which has over 800,000 residents. Jerusalem is not a settlement. It is the capital of Israel, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Tuesday in a sharp retort to international criticism about plans for the new homes in the Jewish neighborhoods of East Jerusalem. He went on to say the government never agreed to place any restrictions on construction in Jerusalem, which has over 800,000 residents. The Prime Minister's office said in a statement it issued while Benjamin Netanyahu was in New York. Obama calls the East Jerusalem construction plans unhelpful, so he's not helping anything with his remarks. And, none of the peace agreements ever have said they could no longer build in Jerusalem. It didn't apply. The building freeze, the 10-month freeze from last September, didn't apply to Jerusalem. Only applied to the West Bank and to other parts of what are going to be considered Arab settlements. So, I don't know what the problem is, but you can bet that this is going to cause more problems with the peace agreement. Here's a related story out of IsraelToday.com. Palestinian leader says, we're free to break agreements. Really? Well, you've pretty much broken them all already, so, how's that news stories? Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas, held by the West as a moderate, declared this week that the Palestinians are free to break their agreements with Israel at any time. That's nothing new. He said, we met our obligations, which is laughable, but you, Israel, did not, and so we are free from obligations. Of course, Israel has complied with many previous agreements, as evidenced by the fact that Abbas's Palestinian Authority today rules the bulk of the Arab population in Judea and Samaria, and that the Palestinian Authority has an armed military force, and that Israel has fully evacuated all Jews from the Gaza Strip. Hello, they kept most all of their agreements. It's you, Mr. Abbas, has kept none of them. I'll prove it in the story. Israelis recognize Abbas's favorite tactic of ignoring past Israeli concessions and compliance by focusing solely on his pet demand of the day, which currently is that Israel cease all Jewish construction in Judea, Samaria, and Jerusalem. As long as Israel fails to satisfy that new demand, Abbas claims that it is non-compliant and always has been. Makes perfect sense. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Authority has still not fulfilled its earliest peace process commitments to disarm and dismantle the Palestinian terrorist infrastructure. It's only grown. End anti-Israel incitement. That's grown too. In the Palestinian media, and to educate its public for peace and coexistence. Not happened. If anything, the Palestinians have moved in the opposite direction. Ah, boy. Why can't we all just get along? Here's something else in Yahoo.com. Says Palestinians say it's time to recognize their state. This out of Jerusalem. Israel's plan to build new homes on occupied land should be countered by international recognition of a Palestinian state, said the chief Palestinian negotiator today. Saeb Erekat said it was clear from the latest announcement of building plans that Israel wants settlements, not peace. Oh boy, it continues. I'm not going to read all this because it's just rhetoric coming from the other side, saying they've broken their peace agreements. Here's a story out of the Jerusalem Post. Says North Korea may have sold nuclear technology to Iran and Syria. Great. A UN report suggesting that North Korea may have supplied Iran, Syria, and Myanmar with banned nuclear technology could be published on the Security Council's North Korea Sanctions Committee website on Tuesday, prior to being reviewed by the Council, Reuters has reported. So that's Always wondered where Iran might get the technology, if it came from Russia, China, North Korea, or where. Now we know. Here's a story out of the Telegraph.co. You may or may not know this. George W. Bush had ordered the Pentagon to plan an Iran attack. You know, his new book just came out today, The Decision Points, and he revealed that he considered a covert attack on Syria at Israel's request. And he also wrote, I directed the Pentagon to study what would be necessary for a strike on Iran. This would be to stop the bomb clock, at least temporarily. Interesting. I wonder if the current administration has a plan for that. Here's something out of archamax.com, religious news. Cleric says American devils must die. American devils. This out of Yemen. An extremist Yemeni American Muslim cleric says in a new video, Americans are devils and should be killed. More of that peaceful religion rearing its ugly head. Anwar al-Awlaki's 23-minute video was released by Islamic websites Monday, ABC News reported. He said jihadists who want to kill Americans don't need a fatwa, which is a special religious permission. He said don't consult with anybody in killing the Americans, said al-Awlaki, sitting at a desk with a dagger in his belt. Fighting the devil doesn't require consultation or prayer seeking divine guidance. They are the party of the devils. You know, it's funny coming from someone who worships the devil. Hello, doesn't worship the one true God. He calls Americans and Muslims two opposites who will never come together, and that it is either us or them. Peaceful. Sounds very peaceful. Anyway, I'm not going to read the rest of that. But he went on to say he ordered him arrested by force, dead or alive, when he failed to appear. Al-Awlaki he's a wanted man. And I've seen where we've just sent some Predator drones to Yemen to help find him. Okay, Obama's in Indonesia. He says much work is needed on Muslim ties. This out of the BBC. President Barack Obama has admitted the U.S. must do a lot more work to improve ties with the Muslim world as he continues an Asian tour in Indonesia. Why does he keep reaching out to the Muslims and not to the Christians or the Jews? Always the Muslims. I'm not going to read this whole story, but he was back in Indonesia where he grew up as a boy. He lived there from the time he was, let's see, what does it say, from 6 until about 11. And, you know, his father was Muslim. Indonesia is a very big Muslim population. In fact, it's one of the world's biggest Muslim populations. And he said it brought back a lot of memories about his childhood in Jakarta. And, he was there from 6 to 10, from the ages of 6 to 10. And he went on to talk about how much he loves it. And, I'm sorry. I always go by what a man does and says, or what he does and not so much what he says. Anyway, let's get into the Word. Ephesians 2:14 says, For he himself is our peace, who has made both one, and has broken down the middle wall of separation. Now, yesterday we saw how the cross was God's tool to reconcile man to himself. But that's not where the reconciling power of the cross ends. Just as the cross reconciles our vertical relationship with God, it also serves to reconcile our horizontal relationships with our fellow man. Okay? Paul points to this in the book of Ephesians as he shares how Christ's death on the cross broke down the wall of division that separated the Jews and the Gentiles. Now, to fully appreciate this, we need to understand how this wall got there. Okay, for several centuries, the Jews and Gentiles were at constant odds. Jews viewed Gentiles as godless pagans, which they typically were, and the Gentiles viewed Jews as extreme religious zealots. In the natural world, they typically had nothing to do with each other. But the cross changed all that. Because of the cross, both groups realized the thing that they have in common, their sin, was forgiven. In Christ, Jews and Gentiles were brought onto a level playing ground and given a common gift so precious that it transcended their differences. Now, the same holds true today. Not only does the cross reconcile Jews and Gentiles, it has the power to reconcile every racial and social distinction in our culture today. In Colossians 3, verse 11, it says, I wanted to read this out of this other book. Colossians 3, verse 11 says, where there is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcised nor uncircumcised, but Christ is all and in all. God bless you.